Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Do mosquitoes like you? Stay tuned. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second day of our Outdoors article entitled Enjoy Nature Safely. And we hope that you will this summer as you're enjoying the outdoors. And my name is Linda, and I have with me...
I'm Zach.
And Pauline here.
And yesterday we talked about 5 tips for playing it safe in the great outdoors. We hope that you all learned something from it. I know I certainly learned a couple of things. And tell us one point that we talked about that stood out to you, Zach.
Well, something that repeated in 2 different of the points is just to stay on hiking trails. It comes up when we're talking about using your snake smarts as well as being bear aware, but it's just stay on those trails. Don't wander off. Keep, whether it's, preventing these types of things with the animals or even just getting lost out there. I think it's a really good tip.
And what about you, Pauline?
I really enjoyed talking about the stingray shuffle. I'd actually never heard of that before. I love stingrays. I think they're really beautiful creatures. So it's fun to know one more way to stay safe and also maybe even get them to come up so you can see them. Also, I had one other thought after we talked about this the other day. And I thought one thing sometimes people forget to talk about when we talk about outdoor safety is just don't eat anything. If it looks like a berry you think you recognized or a fruit, just really do not do it unless you are over 100% sure, because there are a lot of look-alike things out there that could be highly dangerous. And I feel like often that's the thing that most often, when I lived in Costa Rica, that's what I saw most often being a danger to people, was people who picked up and tried to taste something that they should not have. That's really dangerous.
And also, they are attractive a lot of times, like low-lying berries. I would never ever eat a berry. There are a lot of poisonous berries, especially in mountainous areas and in berry patch areas around the Midwest in the United States if you're traveling there. And they're bright red and look beautiful and great to eat and very, very dangerous. And you were talking about even fruit that's coming off of trees.
Right. There's a tree in Costa Rica that is extraordinarily dangerous. I frequently think of it as the most dangerous thing in Costa Rica, and it's just a tree, because if you climb it, it will give you a rash. If you use the wood for fires, it can sting your eyes and even cause blindness. And if you eat the apple-like fruit that comes off of it, you can die. So, really, you just need to be so careful about touching plants and, ingesting them. Definitely just don't do it, because it can be very dangerous.
Usually if you're with a guide, when we've traveled in some places in Southeast Asia, we've been with guides and they say, this is this kind of plant, you can eat this, and they'll point out things too. So if you're in question and you're by yourself or with a group of friends, just stay away.
Right. And it's one thing if the guide tells you to do it, he takes a bite, and then you take a bite. I'd probably do that. But then I wouldn't trust my ability the next time I go out by myself to recognize that same one, because you don't know. There might be one that looks very similar that is not edible.
Right. So just be careful. Well, today we're going to kind of change topics. Well, we're still talking about the great outdoors, but we're talking about mosquitoes, everybody's favorite insect. And we seem to have a lot of them at this time of year, no matter where you go around the world. So let's read the article on page 25. We're going to have some tips about how to keep them from biting you. And I think they're attracted to some people more than others. Mosquitoes love me. So if I'm in the room with you, you are probably very safe. We are on page 25 of your advanced magazine. So if you want to turn to that page and read along with us, or find it on your digital device and follow along. And we are going to start at the top of the left-hand column.
Repelling mosquitoes. How to stop mosquitoes from feasting on you. The mosquitoes are out and ready to chow down. Jonathan Day, a mosquito expert at the University of Florida, knows how these insects operate. Here he explains the do's and don'ts of repelling these pesky pests. Do: blow them away. Almost any breeze, anything above 1 mile per hour, makes it very difficult for mosquitoes to fly, Day says. If you can pick a breezy spot for your summer outing, that works. Plug-in fans are also a great deterrent, he adds. Don't: rely on ultrasonic devices. There are many ultrasonic devices and apps marketed as mosquito repellents. They don't work at all, Day says.
So the title of our article is Repelling Mosquitoes. If you repel something, what do you do?
Well, you're trying to kind of keep it away.
Right.
And we also can use this like if you're repelled by something, it means you find it really disgusting or you don't want to be near it. It's the opposite of attract, right? So you don't want to attract mosquitoes, you want to repel them.
Yes. So how do you stop mosquitoes from, I love this verb, feasting on you? They seem to enjoy it so much.
Right. So the word feasting, it's not just like taking a bite, right? It's that idea of just like so much.
And sometimes you can't see them. I mean, I had like 4 bites on my ankle. I was like looking for this mosquito, could not see it at all.
So it was feasting on your ankle, or it might be chowing down, I think is another term, which kind of gets to the same point, right?
Chowing down on my blood.
Yep.
So we see that, and that's in our next paragraph. It says the mosquitoes are out and ready to chow down.
Right. So just to kind of, eat greedily or to eat quickly.
I like the part without manners.
So that's kind of, it is pretty funny when you think about it in the context of mosquitoes. But, just for the sake of, learning this phrase, it's a good one. Like if I go to an all-you-can-eat pizzeria, I am ready to chow down.
Nice.
Right.
To forget all of my manners and just to go to town.
Mm-hmm. Well, we see here that we're going to be referring to Jonathan Day, a mosquito expert at the University of Florida, and he seems to know how insects operate, especially these insects. So he's going to talk about what to do, the do's, and what not to do.
Right, the don'ts of repelling these pesky insects or pesky pests. Oh, we talked about this yesterday. Alliteration is when you use the same letter multiple times in a row with words. So pesky pests is a nice one. Pesky is like annoying, right? And I was thinking, this guy lives in the right place to study mosquitoes. Florida, is this tropical, humid area. I'm sure they have so many mosquitoes.
Well, their climate is a lot like Taiwan's climate. So, yes, this area across, the same latitude across. So, yes, definitely.
Especially southern Taiwan would be more of that.
Yes.
Warm, wet.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to talk about a do here. Do blow them away. So, Pauline, I was surprised to hear that you've never heard this before.
Yeah, I didn't know this. And it's really, I don't know. I don't know how I missed this along the way, but it really blew me away.
Yes.
It's a play on words, guys. To blow you away just means you're really surprised. So I was surprised by this, that I didn't know it before, that a breeze, just anything as small as a 1 mile an hour can make it difficult for mosquitoes to fly. So my takeaway was even my apartment in the summer, I can get mosquitoes. So I thought, so if I just sit next to my fan, the mosquito can't, even if I can't find that pesky mosquito that I know is in my apartment, if I just sit next to the fan, it can't get to me.
That's right.
Amazing.
And it says here, plug-in fans are also a great deterrent. And what's a deterrent, Zach?
Well, anything that's going to deter, so like to kind of change the course or just to prevent it from getting to you.
Right. And for those of you who are going to go camping, we talked about this yesterday. If you're going to be outside and you're in a mosquito-prone area and you're camping, you probably don't have a fan with you. So one of the things that you can do is stand in the smoke. If the mosquitoes are particularly bad and you just seem to be bothered by them the whole time, I know it doesn't sound very pleasant. If you don't have any other deterrent around you, then you can stand in the smoke area because mosquitoes won't go in there. But I thought it was interesting that mosquitoes find it hard to fly in a breeze above 1 mile per hour. I think we all might at some mile per hour.
Yeah. So I think what I've noticed often, like I'll be sitting in my living room with a fan on, and I don't notice that there's a mosquito because I have the fan on. And then you switch rooms, and you're like, oh, now it found me. So
Yes.
Mosquitoes can really bother my husband and I at night. You'll just get like that one mosquito you cannot find. It keeps buzzing by your ear. You can't fall
it
asleep.
only takes one.
But so this is just so good to know. Like, I'm like, okay, we're just going to set up a fan on each side and blow across us. Then we
you'll
don't
probably
have to
be
spend
safe.
a half an hour trying to find that one mosquito.
Yes. And then we have a don't followed by our do. Don't rely on ultrasonic devices. And if something is ultrasonic, what is it talking about?
Well, here they're talking about these devices that are kind of giving a high-pitched noise that is going to distract or, I guess, annoy the mosquito and prevent it from getting to wherever that noise is coming from.
and any person that's around.
Well, that's the idea anyways, right? And I've heard about ultrasonic devices when talking about pets. Like, we've heard that dogs can hear a higher range, like higher pitches than humans can. So sometimes they use those for, like, keeping an animal in a certain area or different things. But then the idea was that maybe this ultrasonic high-frequency noise might deter mosquitoes. However, big however here, they do not work at all, Dave says. So he's really emphasizing there's not, I feel like usually with scientists who are studying things, they usually hedge a little like, it doesn't look like, most likely these things don't work. But he doesn't even, slightly hedge it at all. He is just 100% this does not work. And then adds another emphasis at all.
So don't waste your money.
Exactly.
I think the idea was, okay, we want to do an alternative to the sprays and the lotions and this and that. It would be this real appealing idea to people, but unfortunately it just doesn't work.
Okay, well, we have a few more that we want to talk about, so let's continue our reading here. We're still in the left-hand column on page 25.
Do. Wear these colors. Mosquitoes use their vision to search for food sources during the daylight hours. And since they fly very close to the ground, they tend to find targets by looking for things that contrast with the horizon, Day says. Dark colors stand out, but light colors are less attractive to them, he adds. Do. Avoid peak mosquito hours. The wind typically dissipates as the sun rises and sets. The lack of wind at those times also brings mosquitoes out to feed. If you can schedule your outings at other times of the day, you'll sidestep a lot of bugs.
So this might be something new to us, this next point. Do wear these colors.
Yeah, and this is a great one along the lines of what Zach was talking about. He had said, I think all of us ideally would prefer not to use chemicals and bad-smelling stuff on our skin in order to repel mosquitoes, but we don't want to attract mosquitoes, so what else do you do? Well, here we have a really interesting answer that I'd never heard of before, and they say just the color of the clothes you wear may help either attract or detract mosquitoes.
I think it's so interesting. I never thought about mosquitoes using their vision to search for food during daylight.
No, neither did I.
Yeah, I just assumed it was a sense of smell.
Yeah, me too.
But this is kind of a win-win if we're talking about just nature in general, because if you're out on a hot day, you're also going to want to wear light colors. Those dark colors are going to attract more sun and apparently mosquitoes too. So wear the light colors.
Yeah. It says that, I didn't also know that they fly very close to the ground. I didn't really realize the proximity to the ground that they're really looking for. They tend to find targets by looking for things that contrast with the horizon. So, of course, on a bright, sunny day, a dark color would stand out, but light colors are less attractive to them. That makes total sense, right?
Seems to be, yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, but I never would have thought of that. So that's a really great tip. I really feel like I'm learning a lot in this lesson today.
Knowledge is power.
Yes.
The power to avoid mosquitoes. I want that power.
Well, and to enjoy nature, right?
And the other do we have here is avoid peak mosquito hours. Okay, so maybe you weren't aware that there are certain times of the day that the mosquitoes seem to be thicker than at other times of the day. I think on bright sunny days when you're outside, we don't see them so much, or we don't feel like we do. But there are times of day that we might think, where did all these mosquitoes come from? I've been in this area all day, and now all of a sudden there are thousands of them on me.
Yeah, this is another thing I didn't know about. But it makes sense, especially now that I know that mosquitoes can't fly in hardly any amount of wind. So since we know that, then we learned wind typically dissipates as the sun rises and sets. So dissipates just means it slowly goes away.
I didn't know that either. After I read this sentence, I was like, oh, really? At sunrise and sunset, the wind kind of dissipates?
But when I imagine sunrise and sunset, when I've been on beaches or done hikes, I do think of it as being a very calm time of day.
Right.
So then it does make sense. It just wasn't something I was very aware of.
Yeah.
And it certainly makes sense, think back of my experiences just being outside. You're like, uh-oh, here come the mosquitoes. And it's always around those times.
Right.
And now you put two and two together. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, it
Oh.
says it's because of the lack of wind. So at those times of day, so the mosquitoes, I love this phrase, come out to feed.
On you.
On you, yeah, on you. So be particularly careful because, in the States in the summer in particular, this is when people like to grill outside or eat outside, or we like to eat out. In cities, we like to eat at outdoor restaurants. Well, anywhere. We like to eat at outdoor restaurants. And what time of day is that? Usually it's, around dusk, right? Around the evening, beginning of evening. And
We're not the only ones feeding.
I know.
So it's not the mosquitoes.
We're all
So
hungry.
please eat something healthy for those mosquitoes.
So if you can schedule your outings at other times, you will sidestep a lot of these bugs, which is to avoid them just by...
So what does sidestep mean here?
Yeah, just to avoid.
Yeah,
Right.
to avoid, and I'm thinking of another example of sidestep. For instance, if I think there's certain times in the water, when I go out to swim in the ocean or to surf or to do whatever, you can sidestep jellyfish by avoiding those certain months of the year where they're prone to be out. Like in the summer times, that's when the jellyfish come. Whereas if you go in the winter, you'll sidestep them.
Well, there's a reason for
you
that,
go.
Zach.
Of course, of course.
Okay. Well, so avoid peak mosquito hours. I know I was visiting my brother once, and he wanted to show me he has like a lot of acreage in northern Minnesota, and it's woods. So he wanted to take me for a walk in his woods, and it was around dusk. And so as we were spraying, he sprayed even his face, everything. And I was like, I am not spraying my face. But it was chilly, so we were wearing jackets. When we came out of those woods, I had there must have been 1,000 mosquitoes buzzing around my head, even though I had a hood on because I didn't have my face sprayed. He had nothing because he was sprayed, but they were following me.
Wow.
Well, it's
Not
good to
the
know,
thing to do.
Well, it is good to know, though, that the repellents do work, that
Yes,
the sprays,
they did work.
they're effective.
And we shouldn't have gone at dusk. We should have gone in the middle of the day.
Lesson learned.
Well, we have a couple of more points we want to talk about for this article, so let's continue our reading at the top of the right-hand column on page 25.
Do. Resist the urge to scratch if you fall victim to a dreaded mosquito. Going after that mosquito bite will only make it worse, since all your scratching adds to the inflammation. Even though your whole being is essentially commanding you to scratch, stay strong. Try some ice on the bite instead. It'll quiet some of the inflammation, reducing the urge to itch in the process. Don't rely on a high-tech trap. The neon electrical bug-zapping mosquito traps have been souped up with fancy features like black UV light, which can attract even more insects than a regular light bulb, Day says. But mosquitoes are also adept at telling the difference between a trap and a living, breathing host, aka you. They might come in toward the trap, but then divert away and come right to you,
So, if you get bit, should you scratch it or not? Well, of course, you want to scratch it immediately, right? But what should you do?
Well, and I like what you said. You do want to. So it says you have to resist the urge. So, even as they're writing this, the author acknowledges we all have that great desire, this need to scratch our mosquito bites. But they say what you do need to do is resist that and don't scratch.
I like the way they say this, the urge to scratch if you fall victim to. Okay, this is a phrase. If you become the victim of a mosquito bite. Okay,
Right.
The author here has quite an expressive way of writing, I think. And it makes the mosquito sound like our most deadly enemy, even though it's such a small thing. For some of us, it might be. So
True.
going after that mosquito bite will only make it worse since it adds to the inflammation.
And here we have inflammation, a specialized term, and that's just referring to anything that, on your skin that turns kind of red and it'll swell up. It'll get kind of puffy, and it just means it's inflamed. There's
Right.
inflammation going on. But here the author does give us another do. After we resist that urge, you can try ice, which is interesting. That could help with the inflammation.
Okay. Yeah, I think because it's inflamed, it's red and hot. You want to try to cool it down, and it'll take some of that. It'll reduce the swelling,
Right.
okay, and the redness. Oftentimes, our tendency is to put something on to keep it in. We want to put like some kind of salve or some kind of lotion on it to make it feel better, but it kind of seems to hold that inflammation in. So ice it first, maybe, and then put something on.
That's a good idea. Also, just to practice using one of our keywords or vocabulary focus words we've learned today, this dissipate. Another way they could have said this was that by using ice, the urge to itch your skin will dissipate. Oh, but there's also another little point I wanted to bring up. I guess I will call it a do, which is do look around for standing water. If there is a little puddle or a little area of water that has filled up in the corner of your balcony or something, that can be a breeding ground for mosquitoes, and that could be the reason you're having an issue with mosquitoes. Or if you're camping, you don't want to put your tent next to a still pond because, again, you're going to have lots of mosquitoes there.
Right. So you want to look for a breezy spot in an open area that's very, very dry. Yes. And then what about high-tech traps?
Well, they're saying not to rely on them. That these, we're talking about those neon glowing, sometimes they're very loud machines that people will put in certain areas. Also, a good word that Pauline introduced was breeding grounds, where you think they might be, a very descriptive way of saying that. And they say that they are often souped up. Often we'll use this term to actually refer to cars or automobiles, but if something is souped up, it is just made more powerful.
And it has lots of fancy features, which they even say in there. So if something has a lot of extra features to it, we can say it's souped up. For example, these electric mosquito traps are souped up with UV lights, as well as other things.
Yeah, and UV is one of our specialized terms that means electromagnetic radiation, so it's shorter wavelengths that go beyond what we can actually see, and they attract insects, even more insects than a regular light bulb. Now, is he's saying they're not really totally reliable?
At least not for mosquitoes, right? He says mosquitoes are also adept, so very good at telling the difference between a trap and a living, breathing host, the person it wants or the thing it could feed on. In other words, AKA you.
Also known as-
Well, that's kind of nice to know that, maybe not by a mosquito, but that we're not the same as a machine.
Good point. Although I thought this was a really good point, too, is that they might come in towards the trap, so they might initially be attracted to the lights and whatever's going on with this trap. But if you are anywhere near it, they're going to immediately notice, like, oh, you are much more interesting. And suddenly you've actually, given it a homing beam on you. Like, oh, come over here and see what humans are around. I thought that was really interesting. You
yeah,
might
that is-
actually be doing the exact opposite of what you want to do.
Providing an attractive ground for it to feed on.
That's right. And we're kind of introduced to another word. It's not highlighted, but I think it's worth talking about this word, divert, to kind of change directions. And they're going to now come, instead of towards the ultraviolet light, they're coming for you.
I'm actually really happy to hear that they don't suggest these bug zapping traps. For one, I think they're super annoying.
I do too. I hate them.
I know, they're so loud and bright. I just think they're irritating. Plus, there's a lot of other innocent bugs that are going to get killed that, to me, as somebody who really loves nature, and I think there's a lot of beauty in that, I think it's senseless to be like killing all these other creatures just because they happen to be flying by.
And if you're still wondering what we're talking about, there is a picture just at the bottom of this paragraph of one of these electric mosquito traps.
And notice the person standing next to it. That would be me.
Although, I think actually what she's trying to model, I was trying to think what she's showing. In particular, I think we're seeing here that example of the light clothes, right, that we learned about. That's probably going to be the biggest one I take away from this is when I go hiking, especially if I already know I'm going to go hiking in the evening or near an area with water and I can't avoid it. At least I can control what clothes I wear.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So we hope that you will take some of these tips with you and maybe remain mosquito-free of bites this summer and enjoy your summertime. And remember, you can't always have an ice cube with us if we do get bitten, but maybe something cold, if you are around something cold, you could put on it. Even like a cold drink bottle or something would be helpful. And again, from yesterday, we gave a lot of tips for playing it safe in the great outdoors. So if you plan on going to a new area or even your own area to enjoy nature, and we hope that you'll join us again here on Advanced Radio. See you next time. Bye for now.
Goodbye.